So, welcome everyone to Happy Life Habits Inspiration Point Project and episode 3 with Chantal Coady OBE, the Chocolate Detective. So, really warm welcome to everyone to these sessions. We have 6 sessions in this first series, and today is session 3. So we are reaching the halfway point. And just share with everyone. What I'd like to do is start the Happy Life Habit projects and events with really just a checkpoint, just for you to ask a question to yourself using a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is not very happy and 10 is very happy, but not using the number 7, but you are allowed to use fractions and decimals. Right now, just check in for yourself where you are on that scale, and if you'd like to just drop it onto the chat, that'd be lovely. But just make a note for yourself where you are on that 0 to 10 for yourself level. And really just a reminder that everyone's number is unique to them. Everyone's scale is different. And so it's there just as a checkpoint for us to be aware of where we're at. And what we teach in Happy Life Habits is practices and ways that you can increase that number. So tools, techniques, practices to increase that number. Okay, brilliant. We have a wonderful selection and all quite nice and high. So happy with that. But even if it wasn't very high for yourself, it's all fine. By the end of it, hopefully we will have knocked it a tad higher. So a couple of ground rules. This session is being recorded. If you could put your mobiles on silent for the duration, if you could stay on mute, and videos off during the interview section, and then we will give the opportunity to ask questions after the main interview section, and ask you to unmute and switch your videos on. Just a short introduction to those of you who are new to Happy Life Habits, but also just as a reminder for all of us. I'm Shailene Shah, happiness coach, trained in the science of happiness, and through Happy Life Habits, positively impacting happiness and well-being levels. Inspiration Point is one of the projects that Happy Life Habits has undertaken recently, and it really is just about having inspiring, positive, extraordinary people sharing their journey, their challenges, turning points, daily habits, and learning through personal development, happiness, and spirituality. It's something which we all face. We're all ordinary people, but we do things in an extraordinary way, and that is what makes the difference. And it's really about creating an environment to inspire us, to give us some positivity, and give us some happiness. My friend Britty shared this with me last week after last week's session, and I think it captures quite nicely what we are working with Inspiration Point. And she shared, it made me think, whilst we are all unique, elements of our stories will resonate with each other, and certainly we can seek to inspire one another. And that's what this is about. Sharing our stories, inspiring each other, helping each other on this journey called life, and reminding ourselves that when we do have low points, we will have higher points, and all of us have had our challenges and our journeys, and we work through them, and this is where we share some of our learnings. So Inspiration Point is based on a set of 10 to 12 questions. Every person who comes onto the episode is asked those core questions, sometimes in the same order, sometimes in a different order, as well as some additional questions. The kind of questions we ask are, what are your favorite quotes? What's one of your favorite books and why? What makes you happy? And what are you currently doing that inspires you? And as we ask these questions to our guests, ask them for yourself and see what does come up for you. And in future, if you would like to be a guest on, to be interviewed, you can fill out the form on the website, and hopefully a series 2 or series 3, we can have you as a guest. This whole series, first series, has been sponsored by Raymond James Stanmore. So really appreciate them taking approach and faith in helping us launch this series, and committing to sponsoring all 6 episodes. And very much appreciate Kamal Hari, a friend of mine, who's the branch principal, in supporting us in positively impacting people's happiness and well-being levels. So I asked at the beginning for you to think about what is your favorite chocolate. And I invite you now to write that into the chat. What is your favorite chocolate? It might be one which you had when you were younger, which may no longer be available. It may have gone through a name change, or it may be one which is no longer available in the country you're in, but you've had it somewhere in the world. Okay, so Shilin has shared dark chocolate. We have Ferrero Rocher, the gold packaging and the white packaging. We have Yorkie, dark chocolate with orange or chili. Galaxy, Kenyan Milk Crunch, Ripple, Ferrero Rocher again. Havani has shared, it depends on her mood, and it could be different chocolates at different times. And we have Whisper. We have Maltesers, 70% dark chocolate. Excellent. Great. Thank you all for sharing. Oh, we have chocolate burfi, a nice, lovely Indian sweet with a chocolate topping. Crunchy dark chocolate. Fantastic. Now, with chocolate, those of you who've come to Happy Life Habit sessions before have heard me share about the happy chemicals that get released into our system: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And we shared that dark chocolate releases and makes us feel good. Releases serotonin, which helps us feel good and lifts our mood. So little bits of chocolate, in particular dark chocolate, can help lift our mood, but we need to be careful we don't have too much and put on the calories. And the other angle or other aspect to it also is when we have spicy food, that helps release happier chemicals into our system. And I think it will, if I remember correctly, it's endorphins which can be released. So combination of dark chocolate with a bit of spiciness can work wonders. And our guest today, Chantal, made a special chili chocolate for our September gratitude and journal habit immersion course trainees, and it was awesome, really awesome. Great. So this is a scene in a picture from Forrest Gump, and many of you will have seen this film, and if you haven't, highly recommend watching it soon again. And recently, we've been sharing some sessions on positive mindsets, and a few weeks ago, Brittany and myself shared a session at Shishikunj on managing your mindset and your money. And in here, we shared this slide, and it's got Forrest Gump saying, "My mama always said, life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get." And that's certainly true for many of us for what's unfolded this year. So, and Forrest Gump had a growth mindset. And as we will hear, Chantal has also got a growth mindset. So that will come through in our conversation. So to introduce Chantal. So Chantal is a friend of mine. We met a few years ago on a course called The Zen of Business, which was run by our friends Shama Shaladina and Yvonne Fush, a 6-month, 7-month program where it's bringing consciousness to the business world. And Chantal would bring chocolates into the sessions for us to nibble on during the break. And those chocolates were awesome and amazing. And I remembered Chantal sharing some of the projects she was working on, and one of them we will hear about today to do with Grenada and the sustainable farming and equitable farming aspects there. So we'll hear about that. But also with the write-up that you would have seen, Chantal, went to art school, at the age of 23, she set up her own chocolate business. And the story to this is pretty amazing. At the age of 23, to decide to go into chocolate, and she's really pioneered artisan chocolate, which we often see, as in a way a bit more commonplace now. But she was one of the pioneers to really bring this luxury artisan chocolate into the realm of chocolatiering. And for her services to the chocolate industry, the Queen awarded her an OBE in 2014, and even created a special category called Services to the Chocolate Industry or Chocolatiering. Last year, after 36 years in business, due to a variety of reasons and unfortunate circumstances, and I guess what we can say as a partner or investor she trusted in who let her down, Chantal ended up losing the business that she had built up and loved, and had really, been a core part of her life. And she will share that part of the journey as well. But without further ado, I am going to come over and just stop the screen share and invite Chantal to come on board. And a warm welcome to you, Chantal. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really pleased that you are with us today. And I look forward
Delighted to be here. Great to see you, Shaylin.
Yeah, and I look forward to continuing some of the conversations we've had and sharing them with everyone. So the first question before we go on to the journey in those areas is, what makes you happy, Chantal? What are the things which make you happy?
I think probably one of the big things is family. I come from a big family, and I have an extended family, but I now have my own family, husband and 2 grown-up children, and spending time together is always great, even though we've all seen quite a lot of each other in recent months. It hasn't been too fresh. And then I think the outdoors and nature is something that has always been important and has become much more important recently. And I love going on my bicycle. I'm more of a cyclist than a walker. So jumping on my bike, going across the river, cycling through some interesting places, and maybe ending up somewhere very green, or not necessarily. But those are the things which make me happy. And I love good food, and quite like wine as well, I confess, and a bit of chocolate from time to time.
Just a little bit of chocolate? Just a little bit of chocolate, Chantal, or a lot of chocolate?
I'm very restrained, actually. Yeah. Having been surrounded by very large amounts of chocolate for many years, it's been a great security blanket, and I've weaned myself off the feeling that I need to have chocolate all the time. But I do always need to have a little bit somewhere, just in case. Perfect,
great. And what you shared in terms of what makes you happy, I think many of us can resonate with this, is that, as you said, family, exercise, and that sense of adventure with the bike, of just going somewhere and not knowing where you're going, and nature, I think you brought up as well on that. So thank you for sharing those. Music.
Oh, I forgot to say, my little cat makes me very happy as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And that cat was inherited, wasn't it? As opposed to...
Yeah, yeah, it was. A dear friend who was godmother to my daughter, but actually she was really like an honorary grandmother to both of my children. And she was very sick a couple of years ago, and she insisted that we take this cat, as she didn't feel able to look after it. And sadly, she did die last December, But by then we'd had the cat for over a year, and she was very much part of the family, and everyone adores her.
Brilliant. And the cat will come up in one of the other questions in a little while. Brilliant. So what are you currently doing that really inspires you? What are some of the things you're doing?
Well, all of the things I'm doing at the moment are quite challenging, because I'm basically starting from scratch again and building certain things. But I've just literally delivered a project working with Fortnum and Mason called the Sailboat Project. So that has been fantastic to actually be able to say now, this is what I've been working on for the last year. And it was some chocolate that got shipped across the ocean on a sailing boat with no engine, and finally ended up in Holland, and then was picked up from Holland and taken around to Northern Ireland, made into beautiful pieces of chocolate, sailed back across the Irish Sea to Wales, and finally put on an electric van and delivered to London. So now it's in store in Fortnum and Mason, and it's their first ever farm to store chocolate.
Wonderful. And that phrase, farm to store, can you expand on that a little bit more and tell us a bit more about that?
It's connecting all the way back to the roots, so to the farmers who grew the cocoa. This particular business model in Grenada in the Caribbean is actually really unusual, because it's turned the whole chocolate making on its head. So instead of just shipping a commodity, which is cocoa beans, to somewhere like England, they're growing it, they're going through every stage of the process to make the chocolate right there, close to where it grows. So they're adding the value on at that end of the chain. And then after that, the chocolate was shipped and it came across the Atlantic, and we took it on from there. So that's so, I mean, there are lots of different people with different expressions. They have farm to plate, or to fork, or you've got bean to bar, tree to bar. But this is going really expanding that thing. So you've got the continuum right from the beginning to the end.
Excellent. And yeah, when we were catching up, you were sharing a bit about why this new business model was developed in Grenada, as well as some of the history that surrounded it. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, the person who set up and who dreamt up the idea of Grenada Chocolate Company was my mentor, amazing guy, sadly not with us anymore, but he went to Grenada in the 1990s, and he was living in a bamboo hut in a little cocoa farm next to a stream, and he was noticing the cocoa not being picked. And he said to the farmers, you know, why aren't you picking this? And they said, well, it's not really worth it. We don't get paid enough money. But they made their own cocoa tea, which was like a homemade product, which was very, very good. And then it set him thinking, well, if they're not making enough money and it's not worth them doing it, why is that? And what can we do to change it? So he then decided to start his own small chocolate factory. And this is at a time when these small chocolate makers, craft makers we call them now, didn't exist at all. There was either nothing really, or a huge industrial company. So he went around and he found some antique machines, and he tinkered and he talked to people in the chocolate business. And with his a dear friend in America, Doug Brown, they did all these tests on machinery, and then one of the cocoa farmers, someone called Edmund Brown, also. So they three guys originally set up the company. Took them a couple of years to get to somewhere close to where they felt happy with what they'd produced. And then they sent me some samples, and you know, the rest is history, really.
Excellent. And there was thank you. No, thank you for that. And I think we'll touch upon bits of that story as we go along. But with that business model also, you had mentioned when we were chatting how traditionally the model was one to do with slavery, and how this one is different. Can you
Yes.
highlight that?
Well, if you go back really far to before the Spanish discovered chocolate in Mexico, the Aztecs were making the Mayans grow the cocoa for them, and they were effectively slaves. And then the Spaniards took the cocoa back to Spain, and it gradually became a popular thing. But it was around the time when the slave trade started in earnest from Britain and other places, where that was one of the crops which was very much using slave labor to create it. And actually I found a book recently, and it had a picture which was almost like an advertisement from about 1840 saying, you know, come to Grenada, grow cocoa, you've got free labor here. And you're thinking, this is unbelievable. But anyway, that is effectively has been the business model, and it still is. And there are still people who are not paid working on cocoa. And we have really got to do something to change this.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think the projects you're involved with are helping to start, or helping to address some of those aspects, and are raising that awareness. So thank you for that. So next one is, what's been your journey? So I think it'd be nice to maybe start with your early days, you know, growing up, and the family aspects, and then we can move on to education and then the business.
Well, how long have you got? It's a long story. Anyway, I'll try and make it short, but basically I'm one of 5 children. I'm the middle one, and I always absolutely love chocolate. It's a huge treat, and I never felt I got quite enough chocolate. So it was something that I used to dream of when I didn't have chocolate. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was my favorite book. And my sister, who was always much more careful than me, she'd keep her Easter egg. So 3 weeks after Easter, she still had a bit of Easter egg. Mine had gone on that very first day, and I'd probably eaten too much and felt a bit sick. But in those days, you did only get one quite small egg, unlike these now when I see children who have 10 or more eggs. So anyway, I grew up with this, you know, love of chocolate. And then, but my other thing, I was always really creative. I loved drawing and painting, making things, making up stories, and living in my own little fantasy world, really. So the progression was that I went to art school. I studied for 4 years doing fashion and textile design. And while I was at art school, I went to meet a friend of mine called Nikki, who was working in Harrods chocolate department. So I said, oh, I'd love to come and see you there, and maybe we can have lunch. So as I was waiting for her to come onto her lunch break, the buyer came up to me, and he asked me, you know, if I needed anything, what I was doing. I said, well, I was waiting for my friend Nikki to come onto her break. And he said, oh yeah, so you're a friend of Nikki's, and are you at art school as well? And I said, yes. And he said, would you like a job here? That was my interview. And later that afternoon, I went up to the HR department. I filled in the forms, and in a week or two, I was actually on the shop floor working there on Saturdays. So that was quite an experience in so many different ways. I think it was being surrounded by some of the very, very best chocolate in the world, and then having customers who were being beaten up basically by the old retainers who made them stand in long lines and wait their turn. that made me feel there's something a bit disconnected there. The emotional experience wasn't quite what it should have been. So essentially, that's what made me think I could do something which will be magical and beautiful and theatrical, and which will tap into people's love for chocolate and make them feel good about it instead of making them feel terrible.
Yep. And so that was being in the right place at the right time to get that job. A bit of fortune, bit of chance, but you took the opportunity. You observed what was happening there and saw, like you said, a disconnect or a problem which needs solving, and decided that you were going to solve that problem. And that's what then led you to go into business for yourself.
That's
so,
right. Yes.
Yeah. So please tell us how Rococo Chocolates came about, the name and the ethos you had behind it, and the challenges faced in those early years at age 23, going, setting up a business.
The next stage really was going from an idea to actually putting a business plan together. And that was, again, it was a funny little thing that came up on the radio, an advertisement saying, have you ever thought about setting up your own business? And would you like to apply to this business course, small business course at what was then Woolwich Polytechnic, now must be University of Woolwich. And I got a place on the course, which was a 10-week course, 4 weeks or 3 weeks in the classroom, and the rest was sort of homework and working on a business plan. So at the end of that time, I had my business plan ready, and I'm really going to show my age now, because we did cash flow forecasts using paper, pencils, rubbers, and adding machines with printouts on them. And having to do these manually, it was so much work. And I'm quite dyslexic. I used to get numbers muddled up, so I'd never come up with the same number twice when I added up these long columns. But eventually, I got something which was workable. And I took it along to the first bank manager I had, who was my student bank manager, expecting to be sent away and having to knock on many, many more doors. But as it happened, he thought it seemed like a really good idea. And he said, yeah, great, I like it, and I'm prepared to support you. And I was asking, at that time, I was asking for £25,000 to set this up, which was quite a lot of money. And he said, well, how much do you have? How much are you going to put into it? And I had begged and borrowed £5,000. And he said, well, so the rest of the £20,000, how will we secure that loan if I give it to you? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, where do you live? And I said, I'm living in a squat. And he said, well, that's hopeless. I can't take that as a guarantee. He said, well, what about your family house? And that was a huge thing to ask, because my father died a few years before that. My mother was effectively a single parent family with us 5, relatively grown-up children, but that was the family house. And for some reason, she decided that she would actually do what he asked and give the deeds of that house as a guarantee for the bank. And I still, that was incredible. And she was part mad and part incredibly confident and supportive that she did it.
Yes. And what were the interest rates like at that time?
Oh, at that time, and shortly after that, we were in the middle of this big boom and bust economy, and I think they were probably 15 to 20%, but actually with everything else they were charging me, I was paying something going on for 25% interest. So I was really running to keep still just to pay the bank in those early days. I was paying myself almost nothing, and doing everything on a shoestring as much as I could, but it was really a struggle.
Yes. And what was I guess some of the values and ethos that you brought into Rococo, and also I guess how the name came about and how it was different from what was happening at the time. Some of those I think will be interesting to hear.
I guess at the beginning it was very much about, you know, literally living the dream and the fairy tale of having this chocolate shop that was my own little world I could play with. And then obviously it was about trying to engage with the customer on that kind of emotional, spiritual level, if you like, and to really bring some magic to them and make them leave the shop feeling very, very happy. And obviously we would give people chocolate to taste. We made it look very, very beautiful. So it was really, everything was very artistic. A lot of handmade chocolate, and exotic things from France and Belgium and Germany, and Switzerland, you know, things which, similar things to what was being sold in Harrods, but in my own packaging.
Yeah. So creating a chocolate experience, an experience of, you know, I think you shared it earlier, that emotional connection
Yes,
to the process.
Yeah. And I think, you know, nothing like this had existed in England. Perhaps if you went to somewhere in Paris or other places on the continent, but in the UK, it was the poshest places were dusty shops with little old ladies and flock wallpaper, and it wasn't exactly inspiring.
Yes.
Or, you know, the other end of the extreme was some very, very industrial chocolates, which, you know, things like Cadbury's and Roundtrees and confectionery, which is, you know, it's fantastic as a product in its own category, but it's not actually chocolate, I'm afraid to say.
Yes. Okay.
It's sugar. It's sugar.
Yes. So you pioneered this artisan chocolate, the luxury chocolate, and the design and the packaging and the whole experience for with the customers in mind. So the customers were central to your thinking about everything you were doing during that time. Brilliant. There was another thing that I remember you sharing about how from when you started up the company, the charity focus and the supporting of various charities. Would you be happy to share about those?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to support charities, and again, this is something that's become very much in the spotlight recently with the coronavirus and everything else. But we would always take, after Easter, you know, we didn't want to run out of eggs so that people would be disappointed, but we would always have extra stock at the end, and we would take it to the children's ward in St Thomas's Hospital and Great Ormond Street and places like that. And then we got involved with a few other charities like Sense, which is a charity for people who are both deaf and blind, and working with some places like the World Land Trust, Macmillan Cancer Relief. I mean, there are quite a few charities that we worked with over the years.
Excellent.
Build Africa, actually, that one. Educating children, building schools, and particularly helping young girls to get an education, because the statistic which they gave, which was incredible, was that for every year that a girl stays in school after they've hit puberty, they can double their lifetime income.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And that Build Africa, which areas in Africa was it working in?
It was based in East Africa, so Kenya and Uganda a bit, but I think it's possibly stretching to Nigeria now as well.
Okay, yeah, no, interesting, and I think many of us will relate to that. Many of the audience are from East Africa, so Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania being areas that many are familiar with or have roots to. So, wow, brilliant. So, I guess moving forward with that, the challenge that occurred last year with regards to the business you'd built up over 36 years. What happened there and how you dealt with having to let go of the business you were part of?
Well, I didn't have any choice about it. I took on an investor. I have to take responsibility for making a very, very bad decision. But at the beginning, it seemed like a really good idea because the business had 5 shops. We'd been in a particular level of turnover for quite a long time. And they say you either have to grow or you're going to go backwards. And I thought, I want to do something with this business. And I don't have the really sort of cutting, thrusting thing that you need to maybe get it a bit bigger. So when someone approached me and said he absolutely loved the business and wanted to invest and help to make it into something bigger and better, I was, if you like, I was seduced and believed that this was going to be possible. And he seemed really, really credible and very nice and extremely charming. Unfortunately, 18 months later, he'd managed to take control of the whole business. And I did put up a very good fight, and I tried to find other backers to take on the business, but he won. And now he's formed a new company. It's still got the same name and it still looks like I might be part of it, but I'm completely divorced and very distant from it. So that was it was a huge shock, but I think I'm now able to look back and think it was actually possibly was the right thing to happen in a way. It's made me focus on what's really important. And I think I have much bigger things to do in the world of chocolate. And while I was doing that, I was completely absorbed, not completely, but that was obviously taking up a lot of my time and energy. Whereas now I can think, okay, what is it I really, really want to do?
Yeah, and that, I guess, is that energy that's been put into the Sailboat project, as well as, over those 36 years, your creativeness, your skills, your talents, your experience, that's not something that's going to be taken away. And that's what you carry from one role to the next. And that's what you are able to work off those strengths as you move forward now as the chocolate detective and other projects that you're doing. And really, a few people who, I shared that, we've got Chantal who's coming to talk, but just talking so highly of the work you've done, in pioneering in the chocolate industry and in the design and all of those areas. So your reputation is out there as having been a pioneer for this artisan chocolate. So thank you so much for doing that and allowing us to really taste some really good chocolate.
No, thank you for saying that. That's very kind.
Yeah, it's the truth. So moving on, what are some of your daily habits and routines which support you and which help you?
I've been building on my daily routines for some years now. Probably around 7 years ago, I started doing something called foundation training, which is a combination of yoga, Pilates, Alexander technique. So it's very focused and strengthening of the sort of muscles and the skeleton, and and there's a lot of breathing in it. So that really good, and I was doing that every day. Then I started adding mindfulness into my morning routine, and then the cat came along and she introduced cat meditation in the morning. And that, I have to say, has been a bit of a lifesaver in the last year or so. So she will not allow me to do my exercises until I've sat down with her for at least 10 minutes. So, and now I have a new habit, which is writing in my journal every day. So I haven't quite put it in the right order, but the journal comes first. And then I go and sit with the cat. And then I do my exercises. And then I start the day.
Wow. So 3 different practices you've got built in to your morning.
And then at the end of the day, I do my journal again. And I have to say huge thank you to you for this, because you were the one who persuaded me to join your course, and it has been transformative, because those other things I was doing were good, but writing that journal is just focusing every day and giving you some kind of practical goals and guidance in it somehow, and just it's actually rebuilding neural pathways to form those habits. And after you've been doing it for a month, then I think there's a good chance that you might well carry on doing it for the next years as my other exercises, which I have been doing, for the last 7 years.
Yeah, no, actually, no, thank you for those kind words. And yeah, some of the guys who came on the first course in June are still day in, day out working with the journal, and they're finding those benefits. And that was what we were working with, to really equip people with this habit to see them through this year, especially with the challenges which we're all facing, and and keep going strong. And our last course is in November, so a few weeks away. Space is available if anyone is interested, and I will share more about it later, but definitely worth considering and coming on board to finish the year strong and go into 2021 in a good position. Excellent. And some of the things that you shared there, do capture, the 4 quadrants. We often talk about the physical, the mental, the social, emotional, and the spiritual, with the meditation, the exercise, what you mentioned about family and time together, all of those things, work well together. That's great. What's one of your favorite quotes? And the one you did share with me is one which I do love, and I think many others on here, but please do share.
Well, it's Maya Angelou, and I might not have it perfectly, but I think it's something along the lines of people will forget what you say to them, but they will not forget how you make them feel.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, really resonates so well with what you're sharing about the emotional connection and that feeling that people who are coming into the chocolate experience were taken away with them. Brilliant. Thank you. What's one of your favorite books and why?
Now I've got it here. And I was going to say you could put up some of those images on your screen, but I'm going to show it to you now. So this is called The Journal of Edwin Karp, and it's particularly appropriate now because it's a journal, and the journal was what has brought us on this journey together. But this guy, who is he's a cartoon character really, is written in the 1950s. It's illustrated by one of my very favourite artists called Ronald Searle. And it starts off that he's been given a journal and he's going to keep it every day. And he talks about his life and what an impressive person he is. And it's all, he's extremely pompous and ridiculous, but it's just hilarious. It's one of those books which when I started reading it, I'd be laughing out loud. And then this, I can show you this also. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But it's terrible handwriting with lots of ink blots and things. But this is, again, Ronald Searle having a lot of fun. But I also took inspiration from that writing as well. I enjoy doing silly handwriting.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a new one for me. It's an interesting.
Yeah, you can find it, actually. I think it's on sort of secondhand booksellers. It's still available, and for about £12 or £15, I think you can get a copy. So it's not nothing, but it's not hugely expensive.
Excellent. Brilliant. Good. So brings up to our next question. What did you learn from your parents?
Yeah, there's so many things. I think curiosity is one of them, to ask lots of questions, to be self-sufficient. I think being one of 5 children, we were really a tribe, so we didn't have that kind of helicopter parenting. So they gave us freedom to be independent and learn how to make mistakes, but at the same time, you know, very strong family with strong values. And my parents had grown up through the war and then got the travel bug. So when I was born as the 3rd child, I was actually born in Tehran. And at that time, it was a place where people of all religions lived cheek by jowl very happily together. So huge amount of amazing culture I was always surrounded by, and very good food. So we were always open to the influences of wherever we were. And so that, for me, that just seems like a completely normal childhood. I know for most people, they tend to grow up in one place and stay there most of their lives. But we were always on the move, always going to the next place. So from there we went to Borneo, where my sister was born, and then to Ethiopia, where my brother was born, and came back on a merchant ship through the Suez Canal to the Greek islands and back to Europe. So it was pretty amazing stuff. That was before the age of 7. And then I had quite a long time in England until the travels took my father off again to Kuwait at that time. And then we got sent back to boarding school. I don't think I mentioned that to you, but boarding school, of course, was where I really, really loved chocolate, because it was one of those absolute comforting things when you're in a very bleak, very cold place. And it was convent school, so very disciplinarian. And I think that was where probably the seed of the idea of doing my own chocolate thing must have formed.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, and I think the early years have been a real adventure and helped form some of your values and attitudes and so forth off and awareness. So brilliant. Who or what are your inspirers?
I think Mott Green, who we talked about before, who was the founder of the Grenada Chocolate Company. He was the real driving force behind it. He was incredible. And I actually have a lot of amazing friends and mentors, but he's number one. Then I think a friend of mine called Emily, who's amazing because she's working in Bali with wood carvers and doing things. And she actually said to me, that I needed to get back to the roots and engage where the cocoa is being grown. So at the time when the Grenada chocolate arrived and I first tasted it, I had 2 very small children, and the idea of traveling around was not top of my list. But it all happened. So again, a lovely lady called Etty, who came to London. Actually, she went around the world making a film about chocolate. And she said to me, now, I've been to France, I've been to Mexico, I've been to the States, I've been to Switzerland. I've talked to all these people and they keep giving me these kind of sweet stories. And I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to scratch beneath the surface and get to the truth of chocolate. In a way, the kind of bitter truth, really. But so I said to her, well, in that case, there's one person you need to go and see and talk to, and that is Mark Green at the Grenada Chocolate Company. And she said, you telling me I need to go there? Well, she said, have you been there? I said, no. She said, well, you're coming.
Oh,
so
wow.
She threw down the gauntlet and she basically forced me to go, which was absolutely brilliant and life-changing. So if it hadn't been for her, I would have known about that company, but I would not have met the founder and I wouldn't have forged this incredibly strong relationship with him, and gone on to work with him for so many years. And you know, he died in 2013, but I feel like we had an incredible, intense time together, and I've just learned so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I do remember you sharing with me how he was inventing machinery or adapting machinery to be able to extract, and do the processing. And now that is, you know, becoming a bit more, well, it's become more mainstream, but he was a real, you know, inventor. I think the word he used was maverick.
He was, yes.
Yeah.
He loved to tinker. That was one of his favorite words.
Brilliant.
Would tinker around and invent things and repurpose things. And now, of course, there's a lot of small machinery that's readily available at not too much of an investment. So almost anyone can set up a little tiny chocolate factory now. But at that time, that equipment didn't exist.
Yes. Brilliant. So in terms of Grenada, I think it might be worth sharing the story you shared with me when I pronounced it as Granada, and let people in on the difference.
Yes, so apart from the spelling, which is Grenada starts with an E and Granada has an A in the first bit. And they are connected actually, because it was the Spanish who named the island of Grenada, Granada. Granada is also another place I adore with the Alhambra Palace in it. But the island of Grenada has been famous for growing cocoa and nutmeg and other spices. And that's where this wonderful company set up, which was actually the first tree-to-bar chocolate company this century, and starting off that whole movement of craft chocolate making. And that was really something quite remarkable. And now on that small island, it's 25 miles, I think something like 25 square miles. Anyway, it's a tiny island. On it, there are now 5 chocolate makers. So probably more chocolate makers per square mile than anywhere else in the world.
Wow, thank you. And the last question from me, is there any question you'd like to answer which I haven't asked you, or anything else you'd like to share?
Gosh, I can't think of one at the moment, but okay. I do remember telling you that the funny story about the lady who was trying to book a ticket to go to Granada, and she actually managed to book a ticket to go to Grenada. And when she got on the aeroplane, she, after a few hours, she said to the air stewardess, "Well, aren't we there yet?" And they said, no, it's another 10 hours or something. And when she arrived and they opened the doors and she was in the Caribbean, she was a little bit put out, to say that. But I think British Airways very kindly offered her another holiday, even another holiday back to Grenada, to make up for it.
Oh, wow. That's customer service. Brilliant. Yeah. Good. I'm going to just share my screen again. And I'd like to share this video that we've got.
There you go. So it brings us to the point of Q&A. If anyone does have any questions, we are close to our endpoint time, but we can stay on for a little bit longer. If anyone has any questions, happy to facilitate that. So if you could get those ready and either drop in the chat or get yourselves identified as wanting to ask a question, we'll do that. And while we're just getting that organized, I'll just share a couple of things. So if you want to follow Chantal's work and find out a little bit more and follow her either on Instagram or Twitter, you can go to chantalcoady.com, and the Instagram and Twitter handles are available on there to click and follow, and as well as read some of the information on her website about this work that she's doing as projects continue. In the chat, if you'd like to drop in your happiness score, 0 to 10, not using number 7. Hopefully it's the same or higher than when we started the session. Big thank you to Chantal for spending the time and the courage to share her journey and story and inspire all of us. And thank you all for taking part in today's session, episode 3. Chantal mentioned a gratitude and journal habit immersion training course. The last one is in November. Going to be setting up the final stages of it over the next few days. So if you're interested, please do get in touch ASAP, and we can see that many people who are on this call and part of Happy Life Habits community have benefited from being on that training course, and really highly recommend considering it. It's the last one for a while. And as I mentioned, this is episode 3. We have 3 more episodes. These will be in November. with Sanjay Shah, the EQ expert, emotional quotient, Bijal Coulson, quantum life technique founder, and Shandip Shah, balance giver. These are on November 3rd, 10th, and 24th, and tickets are now available to book for those on the back of end of this session. So they are available on the website, and if you want to be part of the Happy Life Habits community, these are the different ways you can get part of it. Sign up on the website, WhatsApp list, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and podcasts. So that brings us to the point here. And if anyone does have a question, please raise your hand, and we are happy to take a couple of questions. Otherwise, happy to say we will see you at the next Happy Life Habits session. So does anyone have any questions they would like to ask about Chantal, her journey of chocolate? Actually, Chantal, what is your favorite chocolate?
I have to say Grenada. Probably the one with the cocoa nibs in it, which is a bit crunchy.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Thank you once again, Chantal, for sharing your journey with us, and we look forward to continuing working together and sharing more stories. And thank you again, everyone, for taking part on this. Oh, there's Shandip, do you want to just come off mute and ask the question? I'm not able to see the question so easily on the chat.
Hi, Chantal. Really a fantastic story, very, very inspiring. The question I had was, do you have any animosity towards the person who took over your business after all your hard work and years of hard work?
I would be lying to say that I have completely forgiven him, but I'm working on it because I know that's just holding me back. So I'm very much just trying to look forward and be positive about the future and not waste my energy looking back.
Excellent answer. Yeah, keep going on that, and it will come. It will come because your new journey will be very, very positive. So well done. Really inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the new journey already is very positive. And the projects she's involved with and the things she's doing, really fantastic. And she's part of our Happy Life Habits community. So it's another bonus for all of us. Brilliant. Thank you. So thank you all, and see you at the next episode and next Happy Life Habits event. Bye.